Hi everyone, this video is going to be for Hourglass's new Modernist Eyeshadow palettes, and these are currently available through Sephora. They are $58 each. I will make sure to put a link in the description box below to specifically where you can purchase them. These are eyeshadow palettes that each contain 5 colors, and there are 7 different palettes available. In this video, I'm going to swatch the shades from all 7 of the palettes. And please make sure to go to allurabeauty.com or see the description box below for links to separate reviews for each individual palette. So I have tested a few of the palettes already, so I have an idea of what the formula is like, how they wear, etc. I will give you those thoughts briefly in this video, but if you want more details on each individual palette, because some are better than others, just please make sure to visit the website for that. Alright, please make sure to go check out my previous video if you haven't seen it already. I hope you're subscribed so that you are always up to date with the videos that I publish like this. And let's get looking at these shades and eyeshadow swatches. So first up we have the palette Infinity, which is a set of nudes or neutrals. Next is Color Field, which is a set of greens. Next is Graphite, which is a set of smoky shades. Fifth is Monochrome, which is a set of pink nudes. Next is Obscura, which is another palette of neutral shades. Next is Exposure, which is a set of purples. And last is Atmosphere, which is a set of cool-toned neutrals. So as I always do in my videos, I'm going to swatch these shadows over primer. And starting with the Infinity palette, we have this cream shade. Next we have a cool toned, soft, almost rose tinted brown. Next we have this shimmering bronzed mauve. Next we have a cool taupe. And last up is a dark coca. Alright, so there are your neutral shades from the Infinity palette. Moving on to the Color Field palette, first up is this warm ivory shade. Next is a shimmering champagne gold. In the middle is a shimmering taupe brown. Next is a shimmering golden olive. And last is a glittery forest green. It has gold shimmer particles in it. Okay, so here are the 5 shades that you have from the Color Field palette. Moving on to the Graphite palette, we start again with a warm ivory. Next is a shimmering copper gold. Next is a matte deep brown. Next is a very deep blue with a subtle gunmetal flash. And last is this frosty shimmering silver. Alright, here are your 5 shades from the Graphite palette. Moving on to the Monochrome palette, again we're starting with that warm ivory. Next is a shimmering rose nude. In the middle is a peachy pink with a satin finish. And then we have a light mauve with a matte finish. And last is a dark chocolate with a matte finish. Okay, there you have the shades from the Monochrome palette. Moving on to Obscura, we start with this cream shade that has a very subtle shimmering finish. Next is a smoky brown with a satin finish. Next is a rose gold with a metallic finish. Next is a coffee brown with a matte finish. And last is a cool bronze with a glittery finish. It has gold shimmer in it. Okay, there are the 5 shades from the Obscura palette. Moving on to the Exposure palette, we first start with this shimmering champagne. Next we have an aubergine with a satin finish. Next we have a metallic bronze. And then we have a blackened violet. Again with a subtle shimmering finish. And last up is this shimmering lilac shade. Alright, here are your 5 shades from the Exposure palette. Last up is the Atmosphere palette, which starts with this pale ivory. Next is this pale peach. In the middle is a taupe. Next is an espresso shade. And last is a shimmering charcoal with a blue undertone. Okay, and those are your shades from the Atmosphere palette. Okay, so there are the 7 new Hourglass Modernist Eyeshadow palettes. And here are my thoughts and conclusions. Full disclosure, I have not yet tested on the lids, the Color Field, Exposure, and Obscura palettes. But I have tested the other 4 on the lids and throughout the day. And this is the consensus for all 4 of the palettes, and from what I'm seeing doing the swatches of the other 3 palettes also for this video. While the colors in these palettes are lovely, I love some of the colors that are included, the formula is absolutely unacceptable, I think, for a palette that costs almost $60. The formula is crumbly, it's thin, and it's a bit chalky. You probably saw some fallout while I was swatching many of the colors. Now, I want to explain this a little bit because in videos there's often fallout from when I swatch eyeshadows. That's usually because I pick up a lot more product on the brush for the purpose of swatching than I would for the purpose of applying it to my eye, because the area I'm swatching is much larger and needs more product than the area that is on my eyelid. For these, the reason why there is fallout is not because I'm picking up a ton of product. It's because the formula for these eyeshadows doesn't seem to have structural integrity. They just kind of fall apart, and that is evidenced by the fact that when you apply these to the lid, at first they seem so beautiful. The formula seems like it's soft and buttery and it just blends so nicely. And then after under an hour, you start to see that the colors fade, they kind of bleed together, they blend into each other, not in a way that makes it look effortlessly blended, but in a way where you think, oh, what happened to the color that I applied there on that part of my eye? So these shadows, while initially blending very nicely, they blend too easily because the powder itself doesn't have that integrity that is needed to keep the colors in the place that you applied them. So on top of that, the colors kind of lose their pigmentation throughout the day. They do crease more quickly than other eyeshadow formulas and the typical wear for other eyeshadow formulas. And they just don't keep their vibrancy or the beautiful nature of the color just because the formula isn't there. I also have just minor pet peeves. I think while the wave design that's embossed on the palettes is stunning, the design or the way that they have used the waves to separate each of the shades is really impractical. The bumps for the waves not only makes it hard to get a smooth layer of powder on your brush for application purposes, but it's hard to keep your brush in one section at a time because the borders are all wiggly and strange. So I think it's not as practical unless you you know, it's not as practical for someone who needs to make sure that they're applying one shade at a time. And so that kind of bugs me also when I'm trying to test and use the palettes. And I'll just give you an example of what the palette looks like after I've swatched them. And this is not from abuse. I'm not using an extra amount of pressure to try to pick up the powder. I don't need to because it transfers really, really well, just because the formula just kind of crumbles and transfers really, really easily. Hopefully you can kind of see from the aftermath. I hope that kind of conveys what I'm talking about when I say that the powder doesn't have enough structural integrity to keep the colors separated. So all of this is to say that if you are someone who wants to maintain definition in an eye look, if you want your crease color to stay in the crease, if you want the outer V color to stay in the outer V and to define the outer V and make it more noticeable, anything like that where an eye look needs definition, you're not going to get it with this formula. The pros of having this formula, I think, are absolutely for more mature lids. Maybe some of those shimmery, flaky, glittery shades won't apply to this statement that I'm making, but in general for the less glittery shades or for the satin or matte shades, I think having such a soft blended formula would look really lovely on more mature eyes that need that softness and that sometimes don't do as well with a lot of sharpness or definition. Or if you are just someone who likes a super, super blended look and you just don't use a lot of definition in your eye looks, then this may absolutely be a formula that you like. But I think for most people, this will prove to be a slightly frustrating, not slightly frustrating, a pretty frustrating formula to work with. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I think that for $58, it is not an investment that you should make. You can buy 5 shades from MAC in pan form for about the same price and you'll get a much better formula, or any of the other brands out there, even like Too Faced, Marc Jacobs, Lancome, pretty much any other formula is going to have a little more structural integrity than the powders that you have seen in this video. So those are my thoughts. If you have tested any of these out or used them, please share with me what your thoughts are. I mean, I know that experiences vary with products, and I know that there have been other makeup artists on YouTube or beauty gurus that have sort of raved about this product. And I watched those videos before I tested these myself, and I really don't agree with those opinions. I don't see it. I don't think that these are the fantastic eyeshadow palettes with a innovative new formula that they were marketed as being. Alright, I hope that this was helpful to you. If you are still a fan of the formula and you want to purchase some of these palettes, then I hope that at the very least this video helps you to see what the shades were. And if you are someone who just wanted to know if they wanted to buy it in the first place, I hope that my comments about the formula inform your decision on whether to spend your $58 or not. So thank you for taking the time to watch. Please make sure to go check out my monthly favorites video for January 2015, and I will see you in the next video. How reflective of the book these shades are going to be, but I will certainly share with you my thoughts on any formulation issues or on the colors and how they translate onto the nails.